Number 1.
Tracy Ocasio is a Caucasian female with brown hair and brown eyes. She is 5'5" and weighs 120 pounds and has her ears pierced. She was last seen wearing a dark-colored hoodie, sweatshirt, or jacket, a black tank top, jeans, and a green and white baseball cap. Tracy was born on August 10, 1981 to parents Elizabeth and Joe Ocasio. She had attended high school in Fredericksburg, Virginia. In 1998, her family and Tracy moved to Florida. At the time of her disappearance, she was living with her parents in Ocoee, Florida, where she had 2 lizards, 2 scorpions, and a cat named Cookie. Just before Tracy's disappearance, her parents say she was considering enrolling in a college to study radiology. She had a few jobs, including working in a few retail stores and restaurants, including being a Denny's waitress. She also had previous job experiences at a pet store, Ross Dress for Less, and an arts and crafts store called Michael's. On the evening of May 26, 2009, Tracy Ocasio went to the Florida Tap Room restaurant bar with her friend to watch the NBA game. Before the game started, Tracy had spoken to her mum saying that she would be home later that night. She was last seen leaving the restaurant bar at 1:30 a.m. on surveillance, accompanied by a man. However, Tracy never came home and has never been seen or heard from since. The following day, Tracy's yellow 2-door 2002 Chevrolet Cobalt LS with the license plate J051EC was reported and found abandoned on Franklin Street, Ocoee, 15 miles away from where she was last seen at the Florida Tap Room at 7 p.m. When police searched the car, her keys, Verizon LG Voyager phone, and wallet were missing. Her family said Tracy would never leave her car in that location because she was afraid of the dark, and this park had no street lights. Investigators identified the male who was leaving the bar with Tracy as 28-year-old James Hatice. Hatice was brought in for questioning and told the investigators that Tracy had given him a ride home in the 100 block of Lyle Street. He had wanted to smoke marijuana with her, but she did not like the drugs he had, so she left shortly after on her own. However, Tracy's phone records contradict James' claim about her leaving shortly after. In fact, she was in the area of West Franklin Street, Ocoee until 8:30 a.m. on May 27. In addition, her car was found abandoned 150 yards away from James Hatice's home. In June 2009, officers received a search warrant for James Hatice's home. However, there was no evidence found to suggest he was involved in her disappearance, but he was arrested as police found drug paraphernalia in his home. Hatice has a criminal record that includes burglary, drugs, DUI, and traffic violations. On May 9, 2011, James Hatice was sentenced to life in prison for first-degree attempted murder on another woman named Rachel Clark. He was sentenced with this as well as burglary, robbery, and false imprisonment. In August 2008, James Hatice tried to strangle Rachel Clark. Rachel had offered to drive James home after attending the same party. She was able to escape from the car, however James ran after her and had slammed her face down into the concrete when she fell. In addition to the above, James Hatice has been linked to the disappearance of a man named Christopher George, whose remains were found in February 2011 in Apoka Lake. Christopher George disappeared 15 months prior to Tracy Ocasio, and his remains were found in July 2011. Due to the advanced decomposition, his cause of death is unknown. Christopher, who lived in Apoka, was last seen with James and his friend Tyler Water. He was reported missing on February 11, 2009. The following day, James and Tyler were seen coming out of the woods Ocoee-Apoka Road near Lake Carter by an officer. They told the officer that Christopher was on a hallucinogenic drug and had run off into the woods, so they went into the woods to look for him, but could not find him. Both men have refused to talk to the police about this case. A $20,000 reward is being offered for any information on the disappearance of Tracy Ocasio. If you have any information on the disappearance of Tracy Ocasio, please contact the Ocoee Police Department at 407-554-7210 or Crime Line at 800-423-8477.
Number 2.
32-year-old Hatice Corbacioglu was last seen in Toronto, Ontario on June 13, 2009. She disappeared after driving from her family's home in Toronto to visit her boyfriend Riza Kesse in New York. Corbacioglu never returned to Canada and has never been heard from again. Hatice Corbacioglu was born in 1977. Born in Turkey, she moved to Canada with her family in 1993 when she was a teenager. Corbacioglu had been married twice, but the marriages fell through. She worked as a forklift operator at a rubber factory. During a Christmas party in 2008, she met Riza Kesse, and they soon became romantically involved. In the following months she made several trips to New York to visit him. Kesse was married to an American woman at the time, Winsome Angela Perez, and Corbacioglu was told that they were getting a divorce. On June 13, 2009, Hatice Corbacioglu drove to New York from her family's home in Toronto to meet Riza Kesse for a few days. She was last seen driving on Bloor Street West and Lansdowne Avenue in Toronto, Canada. On June 21, 2009, her vehicle, a brown 2007 Toyota Corolla with Ontario license plate BBEP 355, was found abandoned at the John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York City. Corbacioglu never returned to Canada and has never been heard from again. Investigators found no activity on her bank accounts, cell phone or Facebook account since her disappearance. An airline ticket to Turkey was purchased under her name for June 21, 2009, on the same day her vehicle was located at JFK Airport. Corbacioglu never boarded the plane or any other flight, and no record of her legal entry into Turkey was found. 29-year-old Riza Kesse was a Turkish immigrant living in New York City and worked as a welder in a Long Island steel factory. On July 30, 2009, Kesse left the U.S. for his native country Turkey with a one-way ticket shortly after Corbacioglu's disappearance. At the same time, his wife Angela Perez suddenly disappeared as well. In May 2010, Riza Kesse committed suicide by jumping from the 9th floor of an apartment building in Siva, his Turkish hometown. A note found near his body reportedly blames financial troubles and mistakes made from loving a Canadian woman. 46-year-old Winsome Angela Perez was married to Riza Kesse and lived in Syosset, New York. On July 28, 2009, Perez was seen around 6 p.m. at Chase Bank on Wanta Avenue in Wanta, where she was employed as a personal banker. She was reported missing by co-workers when she failed to report to work in the following days. On November 25, 2009, Perez's vehicle was found abandoned in a parking lot at John F. Kennedy Airport, nearly 4 months after Riza Kesse flew to Turkey. In May of 2010, Perez's body was found inside a plastic bag by workers at the Express Steel Supply Company, Kesse's former workplace. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the head. Riza Kesse was named a person of interest in the murder of his American wife and in the disappearance of his Canadian girlfriend. Foul play is strongly suspected in Hatice Corbacioglu's disappearance, and authorities have doubts she ever left New York. 10 years after her disappearance, on April 1, 2019, Toronto police issued a public appeal for information leading to her recovery. The circumstances of Hatice Corbacioglu's disappearance remain unclear, and her case is currently classified as endangered and missing. Her case remains unsolved. White female. Black shoulder-length dyed hair with brown eyes. She is 5'1" tall and weighs 130 pounds. She has a small scar on her left cheek. Hatice Corbacioglu was last seen wearing white pants, a white dress shirt and black high-heel shoes. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Hatice Corbacioglu, please contact the Toronto Police Service Missing Persons Unit at 416-808-7411 or call the Crime Stoppers anonymously at 1-800-222-TIPS 8477.
Number 3.
51-year-old Angela Green was last seen at her home in the 7600 block of Tomahawk Road in Prairie Village, Kansas on June 20, 2019. On June 20, 2019, Angela's daughter Ellie Green, a student at the University of Kansas, had just gotten home from studying abroad in Italy. Ellie and her mother ended up getting into an argument, resulting in Angela asking her to leave. Ellie left and went to stay with her boyfriend's family. Ellie stated that their argument wasn't serious, but that her mother had never asked her to leave the house before. After not hearing from her mother for 3 days, Ellie received a text from her father, Jeffrey Green, saying that he had Angela committed to a psychiatric hospital after she had a mental health crisis. He had threatened to commit her in the past, but had never followed through on it. He didn't give Ellie any specifics about the hospital, her diagnosis, or her prognosis. He told her the hospital was down south and that she would be staying there until she gets better. Ellie's boyfriend's mother asked if she could visit Angela, but Jeffrey ignored the request. 3 weeks later, Ellie asked to meet with her father so they could discuss what was going on with her mother. They met on the evening of July 16, and Jeffrey told Ellie and her boyfriend and his family that Angela had suffered a stroke and had died at the hospital. He didn't provide many details about her death and asked them not to tell Angela's family. Jeffrey told Ellie that Angela was cremated by either the facility or an unknown funeral home, and that an unknown person from an unknown organization delivered the ashes to his home. He said he paid the person $1,500 for the urn and ashes. Months passed and there was no funeral service and no obituary published. In that time, no one had informed Angela's family about her passing. In February 2020, Ellie told her maternal aunt, who in turn asked for a copy of Angela's death certificate. Jeffrey told Ellie he had a copy at the house and that he would text her a copy of it, but he never did. Ellie went to the Kansas Department of Health and Environment in Topeka and asked for a copy of her death certificate, but they were unable to find proof of Angela's death after conducting a nationwide search. The only document they could find was Angela and Jeffrey's marriage certificate. Angela's niece called the police and asked them to do a welfare check on Angela. When the police arrived at the Green residence, Jeffrey told them Angela was alive and well and that she had run away with a friend. He didn't provide any details about the friend or the vehicle they left in. Ellie then filed a missing persons report. Angela's purse, passport, phone, driver's license and car were found at the home, and she had not taken any money out of her bank account since she was last seen. According to Ellie, her mother didn't use a credit card, didn't go shopping on her own, and rarely left the house without her husband or daughter accompanying her. Jeffrey hired a criminal defense lawyer, and he and his family have refused to talk to the police or media about Angela's case. Ellie states that her father has not provided any more information about Angela's whereabouts, and his side of the family refuses to speak to her. In March 2022, search warrants were executed, one for the Greens' home in the 7600 block of Tomahawk Road, and the second for a property in Olive, where Jeffrey was known to keep vintage cars. In December 2020, a search warrant was conducted on the family's second home in Lawrence, which was purchased by Jeffrey in December 2019, 6 months after Angela disappeared. Authorities have not named Jeffrey Green as a person of interest or suspect in Angela's disappearance. Angela Green's family is considering filing a wrongful death suit against her husband Jeffrey in hopes of getting answers in her case. The police suspect foul play in Angela's disappearance, and her case is classified as missing and endangered. Her case remains unsolved. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Angela Green, please contact the Prairie Village Police Department at 913-642-6868 or the Kansas Bureau of Investigation at 785-296-4017.
Number 4.
56-year-old Glenn Pennie was last seen on October 3, 2004 in Polk County, Oregon. Glenn was preparing for a trip and asked his neighbor to collect his mail and take care of his cat while he was gone. He hasn't been seen or heard from since. Glenn Warren Pennie disappeared from Polk County, Oregon around October 3, 2004. Glenn was planning to leave on October 4 for a trip to Oakland, California. He was traveling there to attend a hearing regarding his late father's estate, where he was set to inherit more than $1 million. On the afternoon of October 3, Glenn asked a neighbor to take care of his cat and collect his mail while he was gone. He called some friends in California that evening and told them he was going to leave early in the morning. Glenn was reported missing on October 6, when his neighbor called the Polk County's sheriff's office to investigate after noticing Glenn's pickup truck still in the driveway a few days after he was supposed to leave for California. His pickup truck was found unlocked in the driveway, packed with a suitcase, important documents, and the keys still inside. His cat was also found at the home, but Glenn was nowhere to be seen. There were no signs of a struggle and no indication of what happened to him. Investigators couldn't find any indications that any other vehicles had been in or out of the driveway. After Glenn was reported missing, the Polk County Sheriff's Office coordinated extensive ground and air searches covering 53 square miles, but no sign of him was found. There has been no activity on his bank accounts or cell phone since he went missing. Those that knew him say Glenn wouldn't have walked away from his father's inheritance. Glenn's brother named a person of interest Dale Pennie. Glenn's brother is considered a strong person of interest in his disappearance, according to investigators. They brothers had been arguing about the $1.5 million inheritance, which authorities believe may have played a role in his disappearance. Glenn and Dale were set to split their father's estate, 75/25, with Glenn getting the larger share. Glenn was reportedly scared of Dale and had told friends to look at his brother if anything ever happened to him. Dale Pennie has denied any involvement in his brother's case. He told police that he was in Bandon when his brother disappeared and says his alibi was corroborated by witnesses. He also denied that he would have financially benefited from Glenn's death. Dale ended up being awarded $29,000 from his father's estate, and Glenn's daughter Christina received the rest. Investigators suspect foul play in Glenn Pennie's disappearance, and his case is classified as endangered missing. His case remains unsolved. Caucasian male born on March 28, 1948. Pennie has graying brown hair, green eyes and wears glasses. He stands 5'10" and weighs 185 to 200 pounds. Glenn was 56 years old when he went missing in 2004. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Glenn Pennie, please contact the Polk County Sheriff's Office at 503-623-9251.
Number 5.
Jennifer Kesse was born on May 20, 1981, in New Jersey to parents Drew Kesse and Joyce Gilmore. After graduating from Vivian Gaither High School in Tampa, Florida, Jennifer attended University of Central Florida in Orlando and graduated with a degree in finance in 2003. At the time of her disappearance, Jennifer Kesse was working as a financial analyst for Central Florida Investments timeshare company in Ocoee and had been promoted twice within a year. She had also recently bought a condominium home in Mosaic at Millenia Condominiums in Orlando. It's hard to believe that your child is no longer with you, and it gets even worse when you have no clue where your child actually is. The disappearance of Jennifer Kesse is a mystery that has left us all in suspense. Drew and Joyce Kesse, the parents of Jennifer Kesse, are now leading her case on their own. However, what happened to Jennifer Kesse is a mystery to solve. Let's have a look at what exactly had happened to Jennifer Kesse and how she vanished. The flashback is that 15 years ago, in January 2006, a 24-year-old girl had everything in her life. She was happily living on her own and happy with her soul and family. She was a lively girl with dreams in her eyes and always energetic and sharp. There is nothing wrong with her life, and she was such a responsible child of her parents. She had almost everything in her life, and recently she got promoted in her job as a project manager, which was a significant achievement for her at a very young age. Her mother, Joyce Kesse, was really close to her daughter. In an interview, her mother said that my daughter was really happy and full of life. Her mother also elaborated that she was in love. She had a boyfriend a year before who lived in Fort Lauderdale. According to her mother, they have a long-distance relationship, but still, they see each other every weekend and love each other so much. The mystery of Jennifer goes deep and deep as we come to know that she is so happy with everyone, but still, she vanished. A week before she disappeared, she had a fabulous party on a weekend trip with her boyfriend at St. Croix. Her boyfriend, Rob Allen, stated that his friend told him he was in love with her, but not making it official. The mystery got more complicated when she came home back happily from the trip on January 23, 2006. It was Monday when she came back and talked to her mother on the way to the office. Later on, she also called her father and other siblings. According to Rob Allen, they had a slight disagreement on the long-distance relationship on January 23, same day in the evening. That was the last call she made, and he was the last person who spoke to her. On the very next day, her parents got a call from her office that she didn't show up today. And that's the day when Jennifer Kesse disappeared. Her parents knew that there was something wrong because she never put her phone on the message record, and that was the first time she did that. Her father and brother went on the road soon after hearing the news, and the first thing they did, they visited her apartment in Orlando, Florida. Moreover, they saw that there was no mishap. Everything was just perfect, as she had just left for the office from her apartment. They further describe that the shower was wet, her makeup was open on her table, and her night t-shirt was on the floor as she used to throw it when she wakes up every morning. Many of her friends and family gathered around when they heard the news, and they gathered on the corner of the street with placards of Jennifer's name as she was missing. Later on, the police declared that Jennifer Kesse was missing. 2 days later, police found a black Chevy Malibu that belonged to Jennifer Kesse. The car was 1 mile away from her apartment. At that time, there was hope for any news, but when police checked and opened the back trunk, they saw nothing. The car was untouched, and nobody didn't steal anything from it. They didn't found any evidence. At the point when investigators assessed observation video from the CCTV camera where Jennifer Kesse's vehicle was found, they saw an individual leaving her vehicle. At around early afternoon on the day Jennifer disappeared, that man crashed into the parking garage, sat in the vehicle for around 30 seconds, and afterward left. The observation video snapped a picture at regular intervals, and each time, his face was blocked by a fence post. Sadly, another lead was gone from their hands, but her parents didn't give up hope. They moved into her apartment immediately to be more close to the case. Soon after they moved in, they heard that there were some workers in the building who used to irritate Jennifer, and she was uncomfortable with that. They told that to the police, but unfortunately, some of the workers had already left work just 1 week before Jennifer disappeared. A half year after Jennifer Kesse vanished, Detective Joel Wright turned into the lead specialist and started a hypothesis of what exactly happened to her on January 24, 2006. According to Detective Joel Wright, she got ready for the office. She went out and started driving, and she went as fast as she could, but on the way to the office she got kidnapped. 2 years later her parents again protested and showed the people how much they were sad for their daughter and that she should come home now. Almost 3 years after Jennifer Kesse's disappearance, Detective Wright chose to investigate the case and talked with individuals on audio tape. One individual he addressed was a previous maid at Jennifer's complex. At the point when he showed the lady the CCTV camera recording image of the unidentified person, she let him know it took after a man she knew from the complex known as Chino because of his hair, clothing, and the way he walked. This was the fresh lead in her case. Detective Joel Wright also found that Chino was working in her complex a week before she disappeared. He also observed that Chino was involved in other crimes, and it appears that he might be involved in her case or responsible for her kidnap. When Detective Joel Wright found Chino, he was already in charge of the rape case and was in prison in jail. Detective Joel Wright investigated him. Chino said that he went to her apartment, she let him in, and everything was good. He further said that he didn't know anything about what had happened to her that day. Chino took a polygraph test, and he passed. The sad part again came in the life of the Kesse's family when in 2010, Detective Joel Wright resigned, and the Kesse's family got disappointed with the Orland Investigation Department. In 2016, Jennifer Kesse's family declared her dead as it was 10 years, and no one knows where she went. Her father stated that was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. In December of 2018, the Kesses sued the Orlando Police Department for a duplicate of Jennifer's case records. Following quite a while of legitimate fighting, in March 2019, they all arrived at a settlement. The OPD gave in excess of 16,000 pages and 67 hours of video and audio tape to the Kesses. Under the understanding, the Orlando Police Department would presently don't conduct the examination. Michael Toretta is a private agent who works for the Kesses. He says he took in somewhere in the range of 10 months after Jennifer vanished. A person was seen unloading a rolled-up piece of floor mat into a lake not far from where Jennifer resided. This tip was particularly intriguing to him in light of the fact that on the day Jennifer disappeared, there were laborers setting down cover in the loft across the corridor from Jennifer's apartment suite. Toretta says he realized he needed to look at that tip. In November 2019, neighborhood police came out with a jumping group to look through the lake, where an observer said the piece of floor mat was unloaded. The group went through 2 days looking, but they didn't discover anything. The Kesses have committed over 15 years of their lives to discovering reality with regards to what exactly had happened with their girl on the morning of January 24, 2006. Joyce Kesse says that they will always keep searching for her daughter on their own until their heart beats. And now they are more determined than ever to solve their daughter's case to make her story alive as long as they can. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Jennifer Kesse, please contact the Orlando Police Department at 321-235-5300, call the Kesse Family Tip Line 941-201-4009, or call the Central Florida Crime Line 800-423-TIPS.
Number 6.
32-year-old Brandy Hanna was last seen in Charleston, South Carolina on May 20, 2005. She disappeared from her apartment on Florida Avenue that evening and has never been heard from again. Brandy Renee Hanna was born on November 16, 1972 to Donna Parent. As the oldest of 3 children and the only daughter, Hanna had a close relationship with her mother. Described as a shy and quiet person, she was said to have a small circle of friends and spent her time at home when she wasn't at work. In March 2005, Hanna started work as a waitress at Alex's restaurant on Dorchester Road, where her mother was also a manager. Hanna had been in a 6-year relationship with Michael Ray McAdams, but broke up with him when she became romantically involved with Garland Zeke Langford. Langford was a friend of McAdams who lived at their place after leaving his wife and kids. In April 2005, Hanna moved out with Langford. They moved into an apartment closer to her workplace in the 3300 block of Florida Avenue in Charleston. The new neighborhood was said to be associated with drugs and crime. In May 2005, less than a month after moving in, Langford ended their relationship, deciding to get back together with his wife and kids. At the time of her disappearance, Hanna lived alone in the apartment off Florida Avenue in Charleston, South Carolina. Hanna did not own a car, and her driver's license had been suspended several years prior to her disappearance. On the morning of Friday, May 20, 2005, Hanna headed off to work. Her shift at Alex's restaurant was from 7 a.m. to around 2:30 p.m., and she got off work shortly before 3 p.m. Andy Ragno, a retired cop who drove people around for a few dollars, picked her up from the restaurant and gave her a ride home. This was the last time anyone saw her. Hanna spoke to her mother on the phone around 5:50 p.m. She later texted her friend Amy around 8 p.m., talking about their plans to go shopping for a bathing suit for their weekend trip to the beach. Around 10:19 p.m., phone records show that Hanna's last text message was to her ex-boyfriend, Garland Langford. Shortly after 10:30 p.m., Hanna's friend Amy showed up at her apartment but was surprised when she didn't answer at the door. The lights inside the house were turned off, but she could hear sounds coming from the TV. She called Hanna's phone and heard ringing coming from inside the apartment. Assuming Hanna was most likely asleep, Amy eventually left. On May 23, 2005, her mother grew concerned after receiving a call from Hanna's workplace saying she was absent that day. She called the police, but they were hesitant to investigate a missing adult as police could not find any physical evidence that positively confirmed the shoe as belonging to Hanna, but it was the same shoe she was last seen wearing at work on the day she disappeared. The white Nike sneaker in size 10 with light blue trim had a manufacturing date from 2005 on it. Garland Zeke Lankford charged with obstruction of justice. 2016 Lankford was charged with obstruction of justice in Hanna's disappearance in December 2016 after making several statements that contradicted earlier information he had given police. Lankford initially told investigators he was working late the night she disappeared, but his timesheet from work showed he had clocked out at 4 p.m. Authorities also discovered through his phone records that Lankford talked to Hanna from 5:08 p.m. to 5:36 p.m. that evening. Lankford later altered his original statement and told investigators he visited Hanna's apartment and spent time with her in the hours before she disappeared. He also admitted to being the source of anonymous tip calls to the North Charleston City Hall 6 days after Hanna's disappearance. In these 3 calls, Lankford tried to implicate Hanna's ex-boyfriend, Ray McAdams, by pretending to be an anonymous neighbor who spotted Hanna getting into a truck with Ray McAdams. Lankford pleaded guilty to the obstruction of justice charges in December 2018 and was sentenced to 2 years in jail and 2 years of probation. Lankford is also facing charges of first-degree criminal sexual conduct with a minor on at least 2 occasions in 2013 to 2014. In December 2016, Michael McAdams, the father of Ray McAdams, told investigators he had been given information that Hanna was sold to drug dealers in Houston to pay off Zeke Lankford's debt. Investigators found no credible information that suggests Hanna was sold to drug dealers but are investigating all tips or information that come their way. Police found no evidence, means, or motive for foul play in Brandy Hanna's disappearance. Her location remains unknown. Hanna was declared legally dead on August 26, 2013. The circumstances of Brandy Hanna's disappearance remain unclear, and her case is being investigated as a homicide investigation. Her case remains unsolved. White Caucasian female. Sandy blonde hair with blue eyes. Hanna's upper teeth are crooked, her molars are missing, and she has a gap between her upper front teeth. She is 5'9" tall and weighs 115 pounds. She has 3 piercings in her left ear and 2 piercings in her right ear. She has a tattoo of a sun on right shoulder and a tattoo of a heart